Hey everybody. So I had a request for a commission and they said, can you do a cross? And I thought, yeah, sure, I can do a cross. Let's figure that out. So I wanted to share with you the project that I'm going to make, and maybe you'd like to make one yourself. So what I've done is I've taken a piece of fiber paper here. This is 1/8 inch thick fiber paper. And what they would like to have is this cross mounted on a piece of 5x7 glass, and then I'm going to frame it. And it's a gift for somebody who's graduating from ministry. So what I am going to do now is I have all this gorgeous Murini from Lori Moreno at Wilderness Glass, and so I thought this would be a really cool opportunity to use that. And so what I intend to do is to fill this thing up. This is just float glass to kind of show you the 5x7. I need to pick a background glass. I'm waiting for her to call me back so we can consult on the colors. But basically, I'm just going to fill this thing up with Murini, with flowers and leaves. I do have some leaves. I don't know that I've got any cut. Well, here's an example. You know, Lori does lots of different leaves and things, colors and such. So I think it would be cool just to fill this thing up with flowers and leaves, and you know, kind of a new beginning for a recent graduate. And then I'm going to fire this. I'm going to take it up to, I don't know, I want a fairly a very light contour fuse, or a really more of a tack fuse. So I'll probably just take this up to 1400. So it's going to catch and keep a ton of the texture. So I will fire it on a shelf by itself first, talking through this as I film a video. I'm gonna put this on a kiln wash shelf, or actually I use paper, but and fire this piece first so that I have the cross. Then when I'm done, I will basically tack fuse the cross to the piece of glass. And so, you know, in that tack fuse, it might lose a little bit more texture as well. So I think I'm only gonna go to 1400. I don't know, I'll hold for 10 or 20 minutes or so. I'll figure out my schedule, and I'll always post it in my video notes like I always do. But stay tuned here, and I'm gonna build this thing and then put it in the kiln and show you what it looks like. Okay, hang on, let me turn off the fan. It's too hot in Texas already. Okay, so what you saw me do was put all those in. I should have done this beforehand, so you may have seen me lift up, although that video is pretty quick. But I glued, so I have a piece of thin papyrus paper under here. I went ahead and glued this piece down, this fiber paper piece down, because it was moving around on me too much. So I glued that down with just some Elmer's glue, and then filled this in. Kind of just painstakingly took my time and filled it in, tried to vary the colors where I could. A couple of notes. So I'm very fortunate. So I tried to fill in the gaps. Now there are obviously gaps, but this Millefiori Murini is taller and shorter, so I think it's going to kind of fill in nicely on its own. But I tried to fill in the gaps as much as I could. And one of the ways that I did that is I'm very fortunate that I have some of these super tiny little guys from Lori. I don't know what the diameter of that is. Probably 2 millimeters maybe. Anyway, so now I'm curious, I gotta check. No, 4.7. Where did I get to? I don't know. Anyway, as opposed to kind of a standard that's more like 7. So I had these little guys, so I was able to fill in, but you don't need that. I mean, you could just use you know, little pieces of frit if you want. That might fill in. I wouldn't do too much. That would create too much cloudiness or too distracting from all this beautiful artwork here that Lori did. And look, there are lots of others. I deal in Bullseye, I use Bullseye glass, and so I like to stick to COE 90. Lori makes all of her stuff out of Bullseye glass, so I know it's compatible. So I like to buy from her. There's a woman, Beth Alongi, I think that is how you pronounce her name, that does System 96. Tabitha Burrell, who I've mentioned before, I love her stuff. She does both. There are plenty of other artists out there that do different Murini. So I happen to be using Lori's. I also filled this up with hers because, as you can see over here, I have quite an addiction. And so I have quite a collection. So I decided to go ahead and use all of that. If you want to consider how to do this project cheaper, I think you could get an awesome effect using half as much Murini and then using maybe chopped up some Bullseye rods. So I don't know if you've ever used Bullseye rods before, but you could chop those up and fill those in, and that would be a really neat way to do that. Or you could just use frit. You could use frit balls if you've made some frit balls before, or you could just use chunks of coarse frit to kind of fill in. And so there are different ways to do this, maybe a little bit more affordable than the way that I tackled it here, but I thought that this would be beautiful, and it's a commission piece, and the price was right, and so I was willing to use some of my stash here in my collection. So I'm going to put this in the kiln. I'll let you know what the firing schedule is, but as I said earlier, I think I'm going to go about 1400 and hold that for 10 or 20 minutes. Thanks. Okay, here it is. I'm very, very pleased with this. Let's take it back over to the workbench and pull off the fiber paper and see what we got. Okay, here it is. I was able to lift this right up off of the paper. I use papyrus, so you can usually get a couple of uses out of that. If I'm real careful here, I think I'm gonna go ahead and fill this in and just make another one of these, because I'm gonna not touch this setup, leave it just as is, and as long as I don't move the paper around too much, I should be good. But here's this finished piece. Well, not finished, the first stage. It's a little spiky on some of the edges, but I'm not worried about that, because what I'm gonna do is put this back in the kiln on a sheet of glass and contour fuse it, or tack fuse it, probably more likely, onto that. And so those should round out a little bit more. I did take this to 1400 and I held it for 15 minutes. And it's not super stable. I could probably snap this relatively easily, but it's certainly good enough for the next step. So stay tuned to see what that looks like. Okay, so here is the final piece. Clearly she chose the blue. This is Bullseye's gorgeous copper blue and white streaky, and she liked it because it looked like water. So there you go. I just simply laid the cross on there. I did glue it just a little bit with some clear glue so that it wouldn't move, and did a tack fuse, kind of contour fuse in the kiln. I went to 1415 and I held for 10 or 15 minutes. I'll post the schedule. I thought it was a little warm. I might go a little bit different. You just need to know your kiln. That's the key. I cut the glass to fit this frame. The glass did shrink up just a little bit, but not too much. And so again, you just need to know your kiln and how hot it is and whether or not you can accomplish that. You gotta, there's some trial and error involved with learning your kiln. And so I love these rustic white barnwood frames that I find at the Hobby Lobby, actually, here locally. The art glass doesn't fit in there like frame glass, so I do have to put a little bit of duct tape on the back to kind of get all this to fit in well. But generally, I'm very pleased. So tell me, what color would you have chosen? You saw all those that I put up there. Drop me a comment. Let me know what color you would have chosen. This is what she chose. I think it's beautiful, but I'd be curious what you would choose. Thanks, everybody. Take care.